Hey, you guys want to hear my new theme song?
Sure.
Heck yeah, we do.
I kind of like it. It's a little different, but here it is. And that's only halfway through. So, for your listening pleasure, we could extend it a little bit. And I think, it's got what?
Thanks, Carl. That's fantastic.
Is that the podcast equivalent of a laugh track?
Pretty much, yeah. Oh, no, this is the laugh track right here. All right. So anytime I say a dumb joke, I'll just...
They'll get the laugh track? Nice.
Right, but I only get one. Like, I don't have a series of buttons, just one button, so it's going to go thin pretty soon. I'm sorry. I have buttons,
pretty
okay?
Soon? Pretty soon?
Yeah, it's going to go.
Start
and we're
thin.
There. Yeah.
Hey, guys, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, what's up?
It's my birthday today.
Dude!
Yeah.
Happy birthday. 29
Thanks.
again?
I'm
Awesome.
29. Mm-hmm.
Is your 29th birthday old enough to drive?
Old enough to drive?
Old
Old enough to drive what?
Happened enough times? Is it
16
old enough to drink? You've had it 21 times?
I guess. No, I'm actually 55 today.
Okay,
55.
so it is old enough to drive.
Hey, with that information...
Yeah, I just divulged one of my password secrets.
And
right?
So what's your mother's maiden name and your first pet name? Just Party?
Hassan Pfeffer. I answer all the questions chocolate.
There you
I've
go.
done that.
Yeah.
I've picked a word and just that's the answer to all the questions.
What's your pet's name? Chocolate.
Where were you born? Chocolate.
Chocolate. Yeah. Although some websites say, you can't give the same answer twice. If they were worth their weight in salt,
Yes.
they would.
I don't
Call
know.
you out.
Honestly, I think picking a random word that you can remember and using it for the security questions would certainly be better. Than, because somebody could get your phone number and your street
That's
you
right.
grew up on. And,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and so they'd have the actual answer, but not know.
And I would say, yes, it's more secure if you don't use the same one for every site.
Sure.
Same thing with
You
passwords.
could use a mnemonic or something to come up with the word for every site.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, let's talk about what happened this week or last week, depending on when you're listening to this. Starting with Twilio. Twilio is a service that I have been using for a long time.
Isn't
As
that a new
developer,
rapper?
Yeah. It's a new rapper.
No, it would be an old rapper,
That's true.
a
It's been around
plain
long
brown
time.
rapper. Hey, that's a pretty good name, isn't it? Plain brown rapper, R-A-P-P-E-R. That'd be cool. That'd be a cool name. All right. Anyway, Twilio is a tool a service basically that does sending of text messages in apps for large scale text messages and things. Typically for 2FA, two-factor authentication, that kind of thing, or notifications.
Somebody have a chimpanzee.
I think your hamster wheel is squeaking.
Somebody just turned on the hose outside, and the spigot's right next to the wall here. So,
Oh, this is what we have to put up with, and this is why we sell ads now,
Maybe
so that we can get a real studio. So Patrick will have to listen to the lawn guy start the sprinkler.
It happens.
So what happened with Twilio, guys?
So this is a common vector for attacks, and one of the reasons we thought it'd be interesting to talk about this attack, even though it happened. Let's see, they mentioned it August 4th, so it's old news now, right? I mean, it's a couple weeks ago, but is our next two stories are going to be very similar, and very big named organizations, and so it highlights the fact that this type of attack vector is pretty common. This attack vector started off with an SMS phishing attack, or smishing, as the new kids like to call it.
Smishing.
Smishing. It's a smishing attack.
Phishing.
well, actually, Carl, you had that happen this week, didn't you? A couple times.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I got messages that were just kind of crazy sounding. I ignored them.
I ignored them, not like these Twilio guys. So what these attacks typically do. So if you're using an authentication provider to log you into the office. Let's say you're at home, like most of us have been working from home. You have your computer, your laptop, your whatever, and you're connected into the office. Well, typically when you connect into the office, you connect over what's called a VPN, right? A virtual private network into the office. Everything's encrypted. Well, for the really secure companies, they just don't use a username and password and certificate for that, right? Too easy to steal. So they'll also use another factor of authentication, two-factor authentication on it. And what that is it can be a rotating number like we've seen before on, if you try and log into Google or whatever, you have your Google Authenticator and it has a rotating number. Sometimes that's the way to do it.
Facebook has one too.
Yeah, most apps should.
As does Microsoft and Duo and many others.
Yep. And honestly, I mean, that's a better way to go than just username and password.
Right.
But it's inconvenient. Right? People have to open up the app. They have to go take a look at the number. They have to see what it is.
Usually they get a notification, don't they?
Which means it's secure.
Right.
Well, but it's not necessarily less convenient because once you install the app, if the app needs your yes or no, generally it will pop up and it'll ask you with a notification.
You're absolutely right. But it popping up and asking you sounds more convenient than you having to go look for the app. So one of the things the crafty hackers will do if they have your username and password is they will continually, every second, try and log into your VPN. And you'll see it pop up. Bloop. Hey, you want to authorize? Bloop. Hey, you want to authorize? Bloop. Hey, you want to authorize on your phone? And eventually,
like
you
Bart
will
Simpson.
click yes.
How about now? How about now? How about now? How about now?
Like that.
That's your new theme song, Carl. That's it.
How about now?
So needless to say, that's what happens is that there's these attacks now where you'll just continually keep pushing authentication out to the user, and eventually the user, higher percentage than not, will click yes, just go away.
Just to go
and,
away.
And
I think that's...
It's criminal career advice.
Mr. Criminal.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like a denial of service attack on a phone, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And when oddly, a lot of these apps will pop up on front of everything. So even if, let's say you're in there playing Farmville or whatever, and you go to click on something, and then the auth app comes up, and you go to, when your finger's already on the way down to the yes, it happens all the time. So you may even just accidentally click on it, be like, oh crap, I wasn't logging in. So that's so be wary of that. If you're not currently logging into your office and you get a notification on your phone that asks you to authenticate and log into the office, don't click yes on that. And frankly, if you do see that, it's not a bad idea to go change your password as well.
Yep. Same with emails. Somebody will try to log into your Gmail account and you'll get a notice, hey, was this you? And if it wasn't, you need to change your password or something.
So let's hit this, Dwayne. If you don't provide the correct username and password, will it get to that second factor of authentication? So therefore, it's an indicator that you've been breached.
There are two ways to do it. Some companies do
Carl.
it where you right?
You can use this snippet of code or that snippet of code.
Some companies what they'll do is they'll ask for your email address or your login name. And then the next thing that happens is the push authenticate. And then you can try the username and password. Right? So then you get the obnoxious pop-ups all the time until you say yes, and then they can try the username and password.
I would just turn the phone off and go have lunch,
Right.
Or whatever. Or if it's not lunchtime, I'd just go have a drink or something or have a coffee or take a walk.
Yeah, because there's no way they could put that in an automated loop.
Right? Let's just
go that's fine. But, after an hour or so of your phone being off, they'll probably give up. Hopefully they'll give up.
I would be careful. So here's some advice for the good guys, and especially the coders, since all three of us are developers at heart, is you need to be careful about you enabling these kinds of attacks.
Right.
If somebody goes in and logs in, and this is a dangerous road to thread, because if you do say, okay, if you get the username and password correct, only then will I let you, do the two-factor authentication. But in that case, now you've got an indicator that the username and password are correct.
Yeah, exactly.
which is also a no-no. So it's hard to figure out what the right thing to do, but I think as an industry, we need to navigate these spaces.
So I've seen there was one customer we were just red teaming. And we did try and break in over their multi-factor authentication system. And it was interesting because what they did is you would put in a username and password for a valid user, and you would click next, and it always allowed you to then X screen. It didn't validate the username and password yet until the Duo went through, the MFA went through. Then it went and checked the username and password. So you as an attacker spraying passwords, every single one of them would have looked like it was okay. And it would have gone to then the next screen where it's, hey, do you really want to allow this? And then they would say yes on their phone. And then it would test the username and password. So you didn't have the ability to spray the username and password and try and figure out whether it was right or not. The other thing that's interesting is a lot of organizations will do lockout policies. Mm-hmm. I'm sure a lot of the listeners, if at work or whatnot, if somebody tries to log into their computer 3 or 4 times with the right username but wrong password, their account gets locked out for a period of time. If you expose any services that allow a user to log in with a username and password, that is a great way to lock all your users out. As a criminal, I can lock out many users by just spraying the wrong password constantly and just continually keep locking out all the users. That's another sort of denial of service.
So I've thought about this quite a bit, and I think the strategy that would work that I haven't ever seen implemented is when you get the wrong password multiple times, it should ask you for an additional piece of information. So after the first 3 attempts, 5 attempts, even 10 attempts, okay, now I need your username, password, 2-factor authentication, and you need to tell me your zip code.
Yeah.
And then you've got another 5 attempts. Now you've got to tell me your zip code and your date of birth. And then you got to tell me, because what'll happen is you'll log in a day later and it'll be asking you for 10 different fields. And it's an indicator that somebody's been trying to brute force.
Yeah, right.
But you can still get in if you know all the information. So it's a way to prevent the hack. It would be inconvenient, so therefore secure.
Sure.
Therefore insecure, yeah.
But it would prevent a user from ever really being locked out, and it would prevent a hacker from getting in because they would just be making it more and more complex because they'd be adding more and more entropy.
Sure.
You're giving away free advice to security companies that do what you guys do. So maybe we need another theme song for, security competition advice.
So we are by our own admission the worst businessmen in the world because we want to have all of our friendly companies, which would be the free world's companies, to be secure. And if that means we do it through podcasts and webinars and other things, and we have to go work at Wendy's part-time, then we'll do that. But trust me, it's a big job, and we need way more help. So that's one of the reasons we do the podcast is we want to give away free, good advice, which makes us sound like serial killers. Because it's exactly what a serial killer would say, but it's true. We're not going to run out of things to say and things to do.
Sure. Yeah. There's more hacks than you can possibly prevent.
And there's 100%. More value we can add to customers than we could possibly convey over the podcast.
Right.
So we're not of the mind that we're going to hold back. Anytime we have good advice, we're going to give it.
Mm. All right. Let's talk Cisco.
Okay. So the reason Cisco is following this is because Cisco also got hit with a very similar style attack.
Okay.
But a little bit of a different initial vector. So I wanted to talk about this one, and then we'll talk about Cloudflare, which was hit with almost exactly the same thing as the Twilio account. So Cisco, large organization. We've all heard of Cisco before. They run, most things technology. So most of your internet backbone providers, switches and equipment and whatnot all comes from Cisco. So interestingly enough, of course, people are always going to try and attack that organization. On May 24th, Cisco became aware of a potential compromise. The compromise, so Cisco has a very, very advanced cybersecurity group called the Cisco Talos team. Those guys are awesome at forensics and understanding what's going on and that sort of stuff. So obviously they jumped right on top of it. What had happened is one of the Cisco's employees' personal Google accounts got compromised.
Wow.
So you say, okay, who cares?
Yeah.
Right? It's like if you compromise Patrick's personal Google account, what would you get access to? His Gmail? Okay, who cares? But what they were doing was also synchronizing all of the usernames and passwords in their browser to their Google account. So when you use Chrome, and Chrome has that nice, hey, do you want us to synchronize your usernames and passwords to your phone when you use Chrome and to your laptop when you use Chrome? You go, yeah, this is awesome. I don't need to remember them.
Because that would be convenient.
Right? Mm-hmm. It's convenient on my phone. Why would I type my password in? This is
Right.
what was happening with this particular user. So as soon as they compromised this user's Google account, they now had the ability to sync all the usernames and passwords down. And some of those usernames and passwords went straight to his work accounts. Right. Exactly.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Not
Big
good.
sigh.
Yeah.
This is what happens when things try to be too many things.
Yeah, that's right.
So the Google browser tries to be your Gmail, and it tries to be your password manager.
Tries to be your operating system, really.
Well, yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, and so it's too many eggs in that basket. So if you had LastPass or 1Password or one of the other numerous password managers, you're not going to get breached through their email system because they don't have one. But as Wayne said, it's convenient to have it all in one place because that makes it easier to steal.
Right. Right. So now you have a successful username and password, right? You go to the VPN website. It automatically puts in the username and password. You click OK. But the next thing it's going to do is the same thing that happened with Twilio, right? It's going to pop up on your phone saying, are you trying to log in right now? Right? Or here's your multi-factor authentication code to log in. The part of this I don't quite understand is the next piece that's described in the Talos intelligence report. Is the attacker then conducted a series of sophisticated voice phishing attacks under the guise of various trusted organizations attempting to convince the victim to accept the MFA push initiated by the attacker.
So the victim got a call and said, "Hi, this is Bob Dabalina from Google, and we noticed that you need to say yes to this MFA notification so that we can better serve you in the future."
Right.
I think it's like that.
But wait a second. So then he goes, "No, I'm not pushing on it." Then you call back. You go, "Hi, this is Steve from Amazon."
Bob Dabalina called me and told me that.
And he goes, "No." And he goes, "Hi, this is Arnold from Microsoft. I'd like you to press the..." And eventually he's like, "Fine." And he just did it. He just clicked OK. Like, if multiple companies called me up, no matter how quote-unquote sophisticated the voice phishing attack was, I don't think I'm clicking on it. I don't know.
I'd tell them I did. I'd say,
that's a good idea.
I'm clicking on it.
Yeah.
I'm clicking on it.
I've clicked.
Right.
Oh, wait a minute. There's another one.
And what you say is, my eyes aren't so good. Can you tell me where's the icon? I don't see it.
Okay.
No, I don't see it. Are you on the right page?
And then you say, ever since I worked for the CIA, the Taliban's been trying to hook me. So, maybe it's them. I always thought it would be great if you could find a terrorist-linked account and give that to the phishers and let the CIA take care of them.
Oh, man.
That sounds like a horrible idea. Don't do it.
We have drones that don't even explode anymore. They just cut you in half.
Wow.
What?
Where did that come from?
Where did that? Yeah.
Don't you guys
man.
read the news? So
Not the news you read, apparently.
The head of Al-Qaeda was just killed by a Hellfire drone. The Hellfire drone had no explosives. It opened up 8 knives and cut him up.
Oh, my God. Really?
It didn't. That's why there were no casualties other than him. It basically was it opens up blades and just cut him up.
Dude, that is horrifying.
That is horrifying.
Well, it didn't like puree him or anything. It just cut him in half, probably.
Into a fine red mist. Jesus.
But no casualties. No way, other than the intended casualties.
There was one casualty.
I guess that's not popular knowledge.
Yeah.
It's in the news though, so I didn't reveal any secrets here.
Wow.
I just imagine this drone was spinning death blades. Like something off of Blade Runner.
Yeah, it sounds like a James Bond movie, like, like this
Right?
rotating saw coming towards you.
I think they just come out and hit you at missile speed, which alone would probably take you out.
Probably, yeah.
Right,
probably
yeah,
would break
that's
some organs. So talking about scammers and people calling you and you pretending to have bad eyesight or whatever, have you guys ever seen on YouTube this guy Scammer Payback?
No. But I'm linking to it right now.
Scammer Payback. So this guy has 3.3 million subscribers. And he gets scammers call him, and he will he actually has a voice that sounds like an old lady.
He plays along.
And he plays along for hours, where they'll like take control of his quote unquote computer, and then they get mad at him. But he also knows multiple languages, so if he can tell it's coming from an Indian data center, he'll start speaking Hindi and all sorts.
Wow.
So it's an intriguing podcast, or not podcast, YouTube to watch.
All right,
I find myself just leaving it running in the background, but it is interesting to listen to the scammers' tactics. Like one of the tactics I didn't realize, because I don't dig much into scamming.
Get ready, Carl.
Yeah,
ready.
I know, right? No, this one. Well, this is interesting. So this is the one where they call you up and try and convince you that they're giving you money. Like, hey, listen, Carl, I realized that we charged you too much money for this past Amazon order. Really apologize. We're going to return it to you. But then the process gets weird, where they then need to control your computer to bring you to a website to show that they're transferring the money back.
Didn't we talk about this already?
We
or
did.
Was it somebody else?
No, that was exactly. We talked about that happening, but it was from this guy's YouTube's is where I got it. So I wanted to mention it. We were talking about scammers and playing around with them. This guy's probably one of the best.
All right, so Cisco, you really don't need to do anything to protect yourself from that. It's just an interesting story, but
don't be that guy.
But don't be that guy. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
All right, let's talk Cloudflare. What happened here?
Cloudflare. And what's interesting with Cisco, we'll have a tie-in later to another organization as well, but they believe that this was being done by what's called an initial access broker. So there's a whole class of attackers now, which are IABs, initial access brokers.
Wait, are we talking about Cloudflare or Cisco?
Cisco still.
Okay.
So Cisco believes that this is what typically happens is a lot of groups out there now are switching over to initial access. What they want to do is gain access to an organization, stay as quiet as possible, secure that access, and then sell it. They don't want to go in there. They don't want to steal anything. They don't want, they're just, I'm going to gain access, I'm going to secure my access, and then I'm going to sell that access, and I'm out of it. Because the person who goes in and pillages the inside of the organization is probably the one who's going to take on the ire of the authorities. So initial access.
How did you
is
get
kind of a big
access
thing.
to this? So-and-so sold it to me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They're not using
liable.
names.
Yeah, but then
liable.
okay. Are you though? So what damages did that person do? You could say, okay, well, I didn't do any damages. I just saw a flaw in the system and reported it to a buddy of mine. They did something
I just
stupid
sold a
with
heroin
it.
making machine to a criminal. I didn't actually make the heroin.
But you didn't add any heroin.
Yeah,
that's true.
Okay, wait a second though. But take companies like Hack5 who put out hacking devices. Right? Those hacking devices have been used by Russian intelligence services to try and break into places. So now it's like, hey, listen, I just tell.
Right, but a hacking device isn't illegal.
Right.
Breaching and securing a breach is illegal.
If you read, breaching is illegal. You're right. If you read the computer crime statute, which is getting old in the tooth, I'm not a legal expert, but some would argue that it's illegal access, not getting credentials or tricking someone into giving you credentials. It's like if I get your credit card number, it's not illegal for me to have your credit card number. It's illegal for me to use it.
Well, it depends on how you got it. If you came into my house and stole it,
that's
you're going to be charged with
different deal.
But if you breach a network and you're breaking and entering, aren't you?
Yeah, but they're not breaching a network.
Yeah, but you have to. You just said.
But wait, hold on.
You secure access and then you sell it.
Yes. So initial access brokers, yes.
Okay, let me give you an analogy. You go to a restaurant, you use a credit card, and the waiter or waitress takes a picture of your credit card to capture the number in the back and everything, and they sell it. So there's probably laws against that. There's financial laws, but the reading of the Computer Crimes Act would say if you don't use the credit card, you probably don't violate that act. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer.
You haven't done any damages. Yeah.
I can't, you can't compare those analogies, and I'll tell you why. Because the correct analogy would be you get hired by a company, you go do business with them, you set up a little access point, and then you quit. And then you now have access to that access point and you sell that. You acquired it by legal means and then sold it. It is perfectly legal for the waitress to take your credit card and run it through the machine, but it's not legal for her to steal it. So it's not legal for you to breach a company, get initial access illegally, and then sell it. You've still broken the law.
I don't think the statute reads that way.
But wait, but hold on. I would even say, I do truly believe that if you were the initial access broker, that's against the law. You shouldn't be breaking into the organization. And I do believe that if you sell that access, that's illegal. And I think the person who does something crazy with it, that's illegal. Right. However, if you have to put up a court case against somebody and have the authorities snag somebody, you're going to grab the guy who did the initial access, or you're going to grab the guy who actually caused all the damage?
I think you grab them both.
It'd be nice if you could.
You had to make a choice.
Yeah. Who's going to make that choice? I mean, you want to perpetrate everybody involved in a crime, not just one person.
Okay, but we've been involved in cases where we've been told there's no one looking for that. There's no one whose edict is to get those people. We're after the murderers and the kidnappers and those people. The ones that enable them aren't on the radar because it takes resources.
Dwayne, I think Patrick is protesting too much. What is he hiding?
Right? He's like, half of our business is selling initial access.
Right? Patrick, are you really a criminal, Patrick?
No, I'm advocating for better laws, but I'm afraid that when the lawmakers go and try to make better laws, they're going to screw them up even worse.
Ooh.
Yeah, I agree. I think that everybody in the three parties is liable for prosecution. Sure. But I think the person who did the initial access and then sold it is probably going to get off easier than the one who did the crime, especially if they stole a lot of money.
I think anybody who gets elected to Congress from now on has to be able to write a hello world in Blazor.
Yeah. And email me at carl@appthenext.com if you want to learn how to do that. You should be able to pronounce the word log in.
Logan.
Jonathan Sook told me he absolutely heard a senator say Logan once.
Oh, my God. Honestly, Logan sounds cooler.
Well,
just saying.
In his defense, he was mid-stroke. So.
Yeah. Maybe he was thinking of Logan's Run. All right, what's next?
Cloudflare. So these three stories kind of tie together, and it shows that a lot of the attackers out there are using very similar tactics, especially for larger organizations. So Cloudflare says that some of its employees' credentials were actually stolen in an SMS phishing attack, similar to the way that Twilio's network was breached last week.
But it was the same hackers that did the Twilio breach, right?
Entirely possible. Yeah, they're speculating right now that they believe they are, just because a lot of the infrastructure was very similar, if not the same. A lot of the tactics were very similar, if not the same. However, in this particular case of Cloudflare, no compromise happened. They didn't have access to anything because they're actually using another factor of authentication, which is their FIDO2 compliant security keys.
Okay.
So they have literally a physical device, a USB, that you have to plug into your laptop or desktop to actually then get access to the system. So
okay.
We talk about 2FA, multi-factor authentication, as having at least a second factor, but in some cases MFA is much better. 3 factors of authentication or 4 factors of authentication. Having a key and having a secure code and a username and password is better.
So 2FA is generally either, first of all, your login page, and then either email or text. And it's usually a text or an authenticator. 3FA would probably be email and text or an authenticator.
Let's revisit factors of authentication real quick because it's been a few episodes. The password, the PIN, those are examples of something That is a factor of authentication.
Right.
If I ask you for a password and a PIN, I'm still working from the same one factor of authentication. If I ask you your zip code, that's all something you know.
Mm-hmm.
If I ask you for your credit card, for you to have an RSA key or a dongle, or I need you to have a thing in your possession to prove you are who you say you are,
right,
then that's something you have. And so your email address, I think, counts as something you have. You have access to the email, and the second factor authentication proves that you have access to your email, to your phone, to your SMS, to the Google Authenticator app, logged in. So those are all things you have. And it's typically like literally a key or a credit card are things you have. That's the second factor of authentication. The third factor is something you are, your retinal scan, your fingerprint, your DNA. But there's an emerging fourth factor, which is something you do, like voice recognition has always been categorized as something you are, but now it's starting to emerge as something you do. Your typing cadence, the way you walk, those are all things that are in that emerging fourth factor.
Typing cadence is an interesting thing, isn't it? And you talked about this early on, that, somebody who...
I knew a colonel with DISA who told the story in public, so I can repeat it, that he went on vacation, came back over of a weekend, got bit by a spider in his hand, went to work, started typing. Within 10 minutes, armed guards showed up at his office and demanded that he identify himself, with his ID and everything else, because his typing cadence had altered enough that it got picked up by their heuristics.
I'm imagining it slowed down if he got bit by a spider.
I'm sure they didn't reveal. They just said
speeding up would be like Spider-Man kind of stuff,
right? Would be awesome.
You don't type like the Colonel. Maybe you got some polyjuice potion, and we don't trust you anymore.
Right?
So.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
That is awesome.
I heard on another podcast called "No Such Thing as a Fish," which is a UK podcast by the people who write for QI. And if you don't know what QI is, you're missing a lot. It's a show that Stephen Fry started. It's a quiz show. People get points for being interesting, not for being correct. So on the podcast, they had some spy techniques. And one of them was listening or watching a light bulb hanging from a string. Like, say the light bulb is in a corridor and there's somebody talking on the phone in another room, and you can't hear them. You can't hear them with a microphone. But because of the small electrical changes, the light will flash and dim and flash so just a little bit. And that if you know how to interpret that, you can actually turn that into audio signals.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about how far we've come from 50 years ago, just the fact that a laser mic works.
Right. Yeah. Laser
is
mics
astonishing.
Amazing too.
And everything's affected by everything else. That's the quantum reality. And so eventually there won't be any secrets. It'll be, I can hear you through the earth. The magma is oscillating because of your footsteps.
Check this out. If you just put a microphone on somebody who's typing, just based on the frequency of the typing, you could figure out like which two noises. You could take all samples of those noises and find out which two keys are typed the fastest together. And those are probably things like, ED or AR or something like that, SP, like stuff that you do really quickly, that people can do quickly. And then they can figure out what you're typing just by the sound of the keystrokes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
That is very cool.
Scary.
All right. It is scary. So, don't type. Don't hang a light bulb by a string. If you think don't talk. Yeah. Live in a box, cut off your hands, and okay.
Yeah.
Be a man.
All right.
Wow.
So, are we done with Cloudflare?
Yeah.
I think we are.
We got to move things along a little bit.
All right. But before we do that, we got to take a quick break. So we'll be right back in a minute. And we're back. It's Security This Week. I'm Carl Franklin. That's Patrick Hines. And that's Dwayne LaFlotte. And we're talking about, what are we talking about? I think I'm going to name this show When SMS Attacks.
Ooh, I like that.
Do you like that?
I do like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, because that's how we sort of started off this episode. But now we're talking about this bleeping computer article that I don't understand. So I'm going to let one of you guys take it.
Sure. So thousands of hackers flock to dark utilities as a C2 as a service. So we've talked about C2. I'll break this title down before we start going into what it actually is.
Okay.
So C2, command and control. So as an attacker, there's two different ways that I can breach an organization. I can be hands-on keys and actively breaking into an organization, which is interesting. But the problem is you want to maintain control. So how do you maintain control when you're not at the keys? You use or leverage a C2 infrastructure, command and control infrastructure, and that's a very vague term. It could be anything. It could
remote
be
desktop kind of thing.
It could be remote desktop out. It could be an agent I install that's beaconing out over DNS. It could be a script that I'm continually running at the startup of the system that comes out to me through an internet relay chat server. It could be. There's all sorts of ways to do command and control.
Okay.
And there's some very big, well-known ones in the market. Cobalt Strike, for example, is one of them. A very big, well-known C2 structure.
We talked about that.
Covenant is another one.
Okay.
Empire is another one. So there's a lot of the Posh C2 is another one. There's hundreds of these C2s out there. But let's say you want to be a hacker, but you don't have the technical wherewithal to create your own C2.
Okay.
There are a lot of C2s that you can then use, like Cobalt Strike. You can buy it or steal it. But there's some
Please
now
don't.
coming out. Yeah, please don't. There are some now coming out as C2 as a service, where there's legitimately organizations who give you the ability to pay $9 a month to have access to a full-flavored C2 infrastructure.
Wow.
So it's interesting, that it's so cheap. The guess right now, according to Cisco Talos, they have about 3,000 active subscribers at $9 a month. So you're looking at $10 a month-ish. You're looking at about 30,000 euros worth of revenue per month. for this C2 structure. The C2 is called Dark Utilities. And it will deploy on Linux, Windows, Android, Mac OS. So there's a bunch of different targets. It will automatically generate a payload that you can then just put on a computer and run, and it will then communicate back to the command and control structure. So you can then just issue commands to it. The only interesting thing about this C2 is the fact that it's actually leveraging what's a place called Interplay File Systems, or IPFS.
Okay.
So most companies are very good about looking at files that get downloaded, right? So if I go to some shady hacker site at the company and I try and download some shady hackery file, most of the times my firewall rules are going to say, no, you can't download this file. We know that it's a virus, or we know that this is malware, or we know this is a rat.
Okay.
And it just doesn't allow it to download. With this IPFS system, what happens is you upload the agent, the malicious software, and it will then break it out into hundreds of different chunks. And those chunks individually get encrypted.
Huh.
So when I make requests as the hacked computer to pull down these pieces of the agent, I never pull down the entire agent as one thing. So it makes it very hard for ingress rules to look at. And B, it doesn't get decrypted till it gets down to the client. So just the warning here is you're going to start to see a lot less sophisticated hackers using more sophisticated tools. And it's just going to make it a little bit more difficult for you to detect whether a computer is actually compromised or not.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sadly enough, the Talos group has actually put out what they call IOCs, or indicators of compromise. Mm-hmm. Hacker advice: don't name your Dark Utilities agent Dark Utilities, because it's literally in the indicators of compromise. Hey guys, if you have something called Dark Utilities on your computer, it's probably a virus /rat.
It's criminal career advice.
But yeah, so just moral of the story: be careful what you download, because it might be a remote access tool that somebody's then controlling your computer.
Right.
And always keep your antivirus up to date. So
yeah,
Good advice.
Okay. Hey, you guys feel like slacking?
Always.
I love Slack.
I
Honestly.
do too. I love Slack.
Occasionally for 10 minutes on the weekends.
But Slack doesn't like everybody. Some users' hashed passwords were exposed for 5 years.
I think it's 5 years worth of passwords, right?
No, for
Or
5
have they been
years. From April 17th of 2017 to July 17th of 2022, this bug has been inherent in Slack. Okay, so this I love news. I love news outlets that make things sound really, really bad, and this does sound really, really bad. Slack
Therefore
bug
awesome.
Exposed. Therefore, awesome. Exposed some users' hashes, passwords for 5 years. That sounds terrifying.
Well,
and if
not
you're
all
using
users.
Slack,
That's good. Who
Right.
was this
So-
subset of users, and how many were there?
So if you shared an invite link to invite somebody to a Slack server that you created,
Oh,
and then you revoked that link, in the revocation of that link, the password hash for your user account was passed with the link to revoke it.
so you have to be running your own Slack server on premises, first of all, right?
It's not necessarily on premises, but it does it if you need to be able to see the encrypted traffic. So
All right,
somebody
but-
needs to be able to see from your Slack client up to the Slack servers, and you've revoked a link, and they need to be in the middle of that traffic. Then they can only see the hash.
But I guess what I'm getting back to is that the first thing is you have to be running your own Slack servers.
Yes, but
It only affects 50,000 of the 10 million users.
yeah,
roughly.
and it 0.01% or something, 0.5%.
0.5% of 10 million, which is 50,000 roughly.
Yeah, if you have a regular Slack account, you're not running your own Slack server. You're using their servers. But if you set one up in the cloud, let's say, is that what they're talking about?
No, so my understanding of this bug is if you create your own Slack server. So, for example, I can go to slack.com. I can create a server for Security This Week, and it'll be securitysthisweek.slack.com.
Oh, so that's
When
not
my
really a
client
server. That's
connects
just
to it.
an account.
It's just right, exactly. But they call them servers. This is our
Okay.
server, right?
All right.
As my client is communicating with that server, if we revoke an invite link, the hash for the password for the account that created the link gets passed up to the server. Now,
Oh.
that sounds really bad, but all the things that need to go into actually seeing this is A, the person has to be on your network because they have to see the encrypted traffic. B, they have to have inserted themselves in that encrypted stream that's going to Slack, which means they've already compromised your network to a point where they can see any encrypted traffic, including probably your banking traffic to your bank websites, bill pay, all that other good stuff.
Yeah.
C, they then need to sit there and wait for you to revoke a link for an invite, and then they only get the hash, which means they need to take that hash and try and crack it. So
Okay. So it's
is
not
it-
really as bad as it seems.
It's
possible?
sensationalized.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
sensationalized.
And honestly, I credit Slack for not saying, "Are you kidding? No, go away. This isn't a big deal." What Slack did is they said, "You know what? We appreciate the report. Thank you so much. We're going to notify every user that this affects. We're going to force them to change their passwords just in case this was used to compromise the server."
It's a chink in the arm. It's kind of like saying, well, if someone gets in your trunk, they can get in your car because of the way the back seats are designed. Okay, that sucks, but they got to be in my trunk first.
Right? But the sensational news story would be like, "Guy dies in locked car," and you're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, but he was
Or
already
more
in the
likely,
trunk."
anyone could be in your car anytime they wanted.
Right, exactly. Right. And it's like,
So
not
it's-
really.
Well,
There's
and
a
that's
lot
the
going on.
problem. You can slant this stuff to make it sound innocuous, and a lot of times the companies, when they're self-reporting, they're going to minimize the impact, or you can make it sound sensational. And a lot of times the news agencies will try to do that, and sometimes it's what's the old saying? Never attribute to malice what can be explained by incompetence.
Hanlon's
A lot of
razor.
times it's just a competence thing. They just don't know, and they think that's a bigger deal, or they don't understand the impact of things. There's just lots of room for errors.
Yeah.
Although,
That's why
like
they
I
need
said,
us.
right?
That's why they need Security This Week.
That's why.
I do like Slack's position though. Like, they fixed it. They not only fixed it, but they fixed it in the same day the bug was reported.
Yeah.
Like, that's unheard of. We've
That's
dealt
pretty
with a
cool.
lot of companies in cybersecurity and issues with websites and that sort of stuff, and they're probably countably few. Actually, there's one I dealt with last week, which We told them about a bug. They fixed it while we were on the call. They were like, yeah, let's fix these things. It's rare that somebody takes that proactive an approach towards cybersecurity, which is good.
Yeah. All right, cool. Have we covered them all? Do you want to talk about this Twitter thing?
Okay.
Someone's bad.
Someone's bad. Wait, on Twitter? What?
The former employee.
Yeah. So you guys all know what doxing is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's when you essentially release somebody's personal information or a bunch of people's personal information out onto the internets.
Yep. So a lot of people who use platforms like Twitter and, Signal and whoever, if you can then get their username and try and figure out who they are, that's called doxing. That's a process of, letting people know who they really are. In this particular case, a former employee last week was actually just found guilty in San Francisco of spying for Saudi Arabia for the government. So what was happening there is this particular employee was working there since 2013 and was paid $300,000 in cash to pull information like email address, phone number, IP address, and dates of birth for individuals that Saudi Arabia was interested in figuring out who they really were. And it's usually were people who were talking bad about the regime. So
when I read this article, I thought the person must be 11 years old because the description of the watch was so insane.
Oh my God.
A Hublot Unico Big Bang King Gold ceramic watch.
Holy crap.
Sounds like what you'd get at the bottom of a Cracker Jack box, but it's valued at $40,000.
Yes, that was one of the other prizes for doxing people, apparently. $300,000 in cash and a $40,000 watch. So needless to say, doxing people is not, it's actually against the terms of agreement in most social platforms like Twitter. And then doing it for a government agency just is extra special bad. So just be careful what you say and what data you think is actually private, because
that goes to the other thing, which is insider threats are worse than outside threats typically. A lot of breaches come from the inside. Typically an insider threat does 10 times the damage of an outsider threat.
Wow.
Cool.
Wow.
Awesome.
All right, so that was an awesome week and an awesome show. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Bye.